Hey friend, it's great to see you. Welcome back. And today, I'd like to talk about this game, Control Ultimate Edition. This is a 2019 third-person shooter developed by Remedy Entertainment, well known for Max Payne, Quantum Break, and Alan Wake, alongside now Control. And this game was published by 505 Games, who has a very random assortment of various games that they do publishing works for. Some maybe a Ghost Runner or Death Stranding Director's Cut specifically, or Hellblade, or Cooking Mama. So kind of all over the board, and I guess Control was part of that as well. I was anticipating Alan Wake 2 quite significantly. I loved the first game. I thought it was very fun. It had its challenges, but it was overall a quite good game. And I heard that there was going to be some universe crossover in Alan Wake 2, so I had recently decided I'll play Control in anticipation for the physical release of Alan Wake 2. And so I did exactly that. I picked this up, I played it first, and Control was the first major release following the 2017 IPO and split from Microsoft that they had done. Remedy really focused on trying to keep costs low for the game with a 3-year development period running about 30 million euros to develop the title, whereas in comparison Alan Wake and Quantum Break took about 5 to 7 years. And many of the team returned to work on this game, so that was pretty cool. So before we dive too much into the development history, just wanted to kind of share this off with you. So here is the front cover, of course. We have our main character Jesse fade in. I quite like the white blocky text that they use and the red, which is an art visual color that we're going to see a lot throughout Control. And this is of course the Ultimate Edition, so what that comes with is various DLC, including the Foundation and Awe, and then some other various like costumes and stuff. On the spine, very simple, clean spine, and on the back we see blending open-ended environments with the signature world building and storytelling of renowned developer Remedy Entertainment. Control presents an expansive and intensely gratifying gameplay experience. So let's talk a little bit about if the game kind of lived up to that. And we get our famous legal conditions and information on the back, along with that same red imagery. Inside, just the disc, and a very simple black as well. So, all right, let's put this on the shelf. So when Remedy began working on this game, you know, a big part of their focus was going to be on designing a core narrative, but leaving the game kind of open enough to where players could create their own kind of stories within the game. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an open world game, but they wanted to instill this organicness to the design of the game itself. And so the first thing they began to conceptualize was the setting, which was going to be the headquarters for the Federal Bureau of Control, called the Oldest House. And so they wanted to really make it seem like a realistic agency that could possibly exist, and then bring in some of the more anomalous features of the game that were going to exist. So the Oldest House is one of those, which is very brutalist architecture, nature, and very mysterious agency, and is currently being corrupted by these objects of power, which are these anomalies, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I really did like the brutalist architecture that they used, and overall the visual design for the game was quite impressive. And the game focused on using these visuals as a means of kind of communicating next steps to the players. So the developers really wanted to limit the UI, limit the amount of markers, and just kind of encourage, again, an organic exploration of the FBC. So, you know, the game also had some cool technology coming alongside it, right? So this was one of the first games to launch with GPUs that were capable of ray tracing technology, so visuals quite benefited from those developments. And one thing I remember is that there was some unclear drama with the PlayStation 5 upgrade option. So I have the PS4 version of the game, and it came with a PS5 free upgrade. But for people who had already owned the game, say on PS4, before the Ultimate Edition came out, they were unable to upgrade it for free. And 505 Games had come up with the explanation of like, oh well, it's just we just couldn't do it. It was like some players would get it and some players couldn't, and we just couldn't figure it out. So that was kind of unfortunate that happened, and I guess I was just lucky I was so far behind on my back catalog that I could kind of hold off and saw this Ultimate Edition version come out. The game sold about 5 million copies. It was well received, and it received a few awards, such as Best Art Direction at the Game Awards. So, just kind of diving into the story of the game, you play as Jessie Faden, and she is the FBC's new director. And she has come to the oldest house really just seeking out her lost brother, Dylan, who is believed to be somewhere in its confines. But what is the big challenge is you got to explore oldest house following an anomaly outbreak. There is something called the Hiss. It has gotten out in the FBC and is corrupting reality. It's changing the structure and layout of the FBC and creating objects that within them contain evil powers that will manipulate reality around them. And these are the objects of power. And so the player kind of seeks out these objects of power in order to contain and quell the Hiss. And by doing so, you end up gaining supernatural abilities that you can then subsequently use to help combat the Hiss. So I found overall that the story was pretty intriguing. The adventure to find Dylan and learn more about your brother's fate was fun, and the FBC up until the very end remains mysterious. It seems like something you would kind of have this open question on watching like the Twilight Show or something, and obviously based on Alan Wake and some of Remedy's other influences, you would know that's something that they're particularly inspired by. And I think they do a good job of presenting a mysterious adventure throughout Control. The one thing I would say is that there are far too many notes. There's a lot of lore building, which is great, especially because Control has been the basis for expanding this broader universe that Remedy is building on. But there's a lot of notes, there's a lot of videos, a lot of documents, etc. And this is good that we're learning so much along the way, but it does happen to become over-encumbering and slow down the pace of the core story, because essentially every room you'll walk into will have some kind of note that you have to stop and read a full-page memo if you're really engaging with every little beat that Remedy has put here. So that's kind of going to be like a your mileage may vary thing. But for me, for such a high-paced action game, I did find it to slow me down at times, though I did really enjoy the story. So from a gameplay perspective, this is a third-person shooter. Third-person shooter is my preferred and one of my favorite styles of game and genre, I guess, overall. And the game is fun in that it's kind of built out to be kind of Metrovania-esque. You will start with basically nothing, and literally, and then you will, as you slowly progress throughout the game, you will get weapons and you'll gain powers, and you'll acquire these to help as you finish core objectives or stop objects of power. And once you kind of get these new powers, then as a result, you'll be able to start opening up new areas within the FBC. And so this happens very organically and naturally throughout the course of the game. I never found challenges with kind of having an understanding of where I should start exploring next, which was fun. But equally so, I would find challenge in reviewing the map and trying to navigate, especially back to old areas I had previously been, because the entire environment is very shifty. There's multiple floors and layers within environments, and these environments move around based on some of the scripted interactions with these objects of powers and the Hiss. And so it was kind of hard to see that well represented on the map. But I didn't find it too challenging, because after a while you'll begin to see the FBC as kind of like your house, right? Oh, I need to go to this room. Well, I know exactly the route I need to take. I need to go down this hallway. I need to turn left, so on and so forth. And so I did really enjoy that Remedy had taken this approach on building in this organic exploration to the game's design. So that was pretty cool. I would also say that one of the first things that stood out to me was the kind of blocky and very fast movement speed and animations that Jessie has. And I would say that they don't really work for the first half of the game. I think the pace and speed and like blockiness of the movement, and kind of this more strafe control type design to the way that Jessie interacts with the camera and where it's pointing. It begins to really work once you have an excess number of powers and there's a lot of action going on, and you need that speed and movement to really take advantage of your environment and fight enemies. But initially, I was like, oh, this feels kind of weird. I almost feel like I'm skating around a little bit, and so I did find that to be quite interesting, to say the least. But over time, the game really did grow on me in its pace and in its gameplay and in its style. Though I will say it does take time to really ramp up, because in the first part of the game, you'll have a pistol, and then now you can, draw an object to you and use telekinesis to shoot it off. But throughout the course of the game, you will learn how to launch those objects, create shields to protect you, mind control enemies, levitate, slam enemies. But by the time you get to this like super ultra powered form of Jessie, the game ends, or it doesn't end, but it reaches its conclusion, and now you can go back and start exploring the rest of the world. And so I wish there was a little more time to play with that a bit. And I also had wished that the game had more things you could do with your powers outside of combat necessarily. I wanted some more experimentation. I always liked the old goofy game PsyOps, the Mindgate Conspiracy, which similarly introduces you to a character who has a litany of psychic powers that they'll get throughout the course of the game. But they did feel a little more intriguing in that I just feel like PlayStation 2 era was one of these eras where you could kind of come up with a random idea and just put together whatever you wanted, and it would make itself into a fun game. And really, Remedy tried really hard in making a fun game, and it is quite fun, but would have wanted a little more experimentation in all the things the player could do with these powers as they acquired them. So maybe a good example in PsyOps, right? You could climb up on a box, and then you could levitate the box to float yourself somewhere into the level, and just do something like that. You just come up with engaging physics ways that we could interact with the world and with the design and so on and so forth. But I did like the gameplay. The gunplay is very fast-paced and enjoyable, and as I was mentioning, when you begin to unlock all of these powers, it starts to feel really good. Like you're shooting an enemy and you're picking somebody up, you're slamming them, and now you're floating in the air, and I did quite enjoy that. One of the things that you'll get throughout the course of the game are modifiers and skill points, of course, to upgrade Jessie's and enhance Jessie's abilities and passive skills. But I did find most of them to be kind of negligible. You might get a mod that's like you have 5% more health, but there's no real stats in the game. So it's not like you have 110 base points of health and now you have 5% more. So it's a little challenging to make it feel like when you apply those mods that there is something very foundational changing. So that is another thing that came to my mind. But overall, I did like the gameplay in the game. And just speaking really quickly about sound, I love the music a lot. It's intense and overwhelming during the action scenes and when it really needs to be. But also has this very strange, kind of mysterious and mythical quality about it otherwise when you're just exploring the FBC. And I really love the atmosphere and presentation that Remedy has created through the visuals of the game and the sound. So the sound is a really great complement to all of that here. And the voice acting was particularly solid. And the fights equally feel and sound intensive and are accomplished through that with the great sound effects that they've applied in the combat when papers and office equipment are flying around in the air and you're shooting enemies, and maybe you're flying around in the air too. So I did quite enjoy it. And then just commenting real briefly on the visual aspects of the game. So graphically, the game looks phenomenal. The ray tracing technology is something that I've been newly introduced to, and I think this game does a very good job with its lighting in presenting that. But what really, really signs the bill, essentially, is the visuals and the presentation. The big, blocky white text that pops in for the new chapters, and the harsh reds, and the brutalist architecture, and the design of the world there was just such a solid presentation to the entire game, and I just loved that about it. And so visually it can have great graphics, which it does, and its technology can be top of the line, which it was at the time, 2019, when the game came out. But even with not considering those, the art direction here is phenomenal, and I loved how it all really came together. And I really did feel like I was part of this mysterious, kind of crazy world that, through the text choices and the drama of the presentation, just really kind of drew me in. So to summarize, I thought the story was pretty solid. There was quite a bit of lore building documents and things to go through that really slowed me down in my game, but the overarching story itself I did quite like. From a gameplay perspective, the game really feels great to play. It takes a little while to ramp up from its initial start and into the later part of the game, and I wish there was more time in the later part of the game where you had this full arsenal of weapons and powers to really put them to use. But I feel like right as soon as it starts to get good, the game does end. So I am looking forward to Control 2, because my hope is that Jesse has a lot of these abilities right at the start. And from a sound and visual lens, the presentation is just so cohesive and well envisioned. And I think it sounds great, and it looks great, and it pulls me in from both directions. So overall, Control was a very solid game. If you haven't played it, I definitely recommend doing so. And I've also recently played Alan Wake 2, and I felt that Alan Wake 2 really did cross over. And so if you're going to play one or the other, definitely play them both. I'd recommend it. So would love to know if you have played Control, and if you have, what you thought about the game, and if you share some of my opinions. Or if you don't, I'd love to hear about it. And if you like the video, please like the video and subscribe. Would love to have you join the community and stick around and chat games with me in the future. All right, well, until next time, take care, stay well, stay healthy, and look forward to seeing you again. All right, bye guys.